Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is making the invisible visible. It's the things that we don't see, these underlying assumptions that shape our experience and our responses and our policies and all kinds of systems. And as long as those assumptions are invisible, we don't get to notice how misdirected our policies and solutions might be. So should be an interesting conversation. Good morning, Rosalind, TGIF. Happy Friday to you. And to everybody else who's listening, it's great to be here with you guys, with all of you. I'm learning to not say you guys anymore for a couple reasons. But anyway, it's great to be here with all of you. And we're going to make the invisible visible. But before we get started with that, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub those palms together. Feel all that friction, the temperature, the tension, the pressure, and all the sensation when you stop rubbing your hands together, the tickling and the tingling. Allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be with you. And another week has just flown by. It just keeps happening. And we're at the end of the month. Amazing. I'm amazed at how quickly time flies. Rosalind says, happy Friday. You found your hat. Where did it disappear to? Oh, I had found it a long time ago, Rosalind. Thank you so much for remembering. That was so funny. I'm trying to remember where I ultimately found it. I think I had ended up putting it in a drawer somehow that I had completely forgotten about. But I am so thrilled to have it back. Yes, it's a very special hat. This was a gift to me from a former client, and I just love it. So anyway, it's funny that we're talking about the hat disappearing because we're also talking about invisible assumptions. So things that are not quite part of our conscious awareness. So, and I just disappeared for a second there. So making the invisible visible, what am I talking about? Assumptions are invisible assumptions. So we've been talking a lot about this. I think that this is really a foundational kind of conversation. It goes into so many different arenas. But last night on movie night for Sustainability Now, we showed a wonderful lecture given by David Suzuki, who is a world-renowned environmentalist and scientist, and I think he's 84 now. I guess this was from 10 years ago, which is pretty amazing. And he was talking about elders and sustainability, and he really brought forward all these assumptions that we have around economy. You know, we hear that we can't do this because it would threaten the economy. We can't take the environmental actions that we need to take because it would threaten the economy. We have a lot of assumptions that about the economy, like the economy is something that exists in the real world. It's something that we created, actually, right? And the assumptions, the invisible assumptions underlying that are so skewed and dysfunctional. When we look at it, the metrics of the economy don't measure nature as valuable outside of it being a harvestable resource. So, for instance, we don't value the water in a lake for the sake of the lake and the creatures that live in it and the ecosystems that depend on it. We don't value trees for we're starting to, but for what they produce, we value them for the lumber that they can become, but we don't value them for their incredibly important, vital, living role in our ecosystem. These things aren't incorporated into our economy. These things are viewed by our economic system as something called externalities. And it's so interesting that the foundational resources for life are viewed as externalities, almost superfluous, when when they're fundamental. They're not even counted. They're just not counted. Just like the labor of women, primarily women, who are the caregivers and the home tenders and the people who do the keep maintenance of the home and taking care of laundry and preparing food, and those things aren't counted as part of our economy. And yet, without that labor, without that effort, without that contribution, the economy wouldn't function, right? And the same with recognizing the contribution or the importance of nature's natural systems to our air and our water and our earth and our food. I mean, these are things that we feel that it's okay for corporations to pollute the water and pollute the air and pollute our soils because they need to make money, but we aren't recognizing, which is insanity, right? We're not recognizing that our life literally depends on these things that that we're giving license to corporations to destroy for all of humanity. It's crazy. So this speech, if you look up David Suzuki Elder's speech, you'll find it. I think it's available on YouTube. It's also available through an organization called Films for Action. But he talked about the craziness of so many of our assumptions, that we just assume that that's true. We assume that the economy's built on this crazy supposition that or foundation of unending growth. And he made such a wonderful analogy. When we look at a cell that is reproducing and reproducing and reproducing and reproducing, ultimately that cell kills the host if we don't route it out, right? That's what we call cancer, right? And yet our model for our economy is an ever growing consumer structure that is completely unsustainable on a finite planet with finite resources, right? So very, very, very interesting. We also have assumptions that we are separate. It's a dog eat dog world kind of idea. And so many of our policies are built on those kinds of assumptions. You know, our consumerism is built on the notion of more being better. You know, that we can extract our own intrinsic value and joy from things rather than quality of life. And he gave a wonderful, wonderful example in the film of this advertisement he had come across that said, oh, you know, prices are up for houses. Now's a good time to sell up. In other words, to sell your property and then be able to get a better property, so to speak. And he was thinking about what would he describe in the listing of the property that made the property valuable. And it was so profound and moving, because the things that made his property so valuable to him, his home, that made it his home, were things like that his father had built a cabinet, and when they made this house, or when they bought this house, he installed the cabinet. The cabinet doesn't fit very well, he said, but every time he opens that cabinet, his father is there. And there are ashes on the property from some beloved relatives. And there's a wonderful pet cemetery that his children made from animals that they had found in the road, or animals who had died, and they made this cemetery in honor of the animals, and all these beautiful things. Good morning, Kimberly. It's been a while. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. So all these things are the things that provided the value, the connection, the importance of this property to him. And none of those things were things that would make it a valuable property necessarily to somebody who was purchasing it, you know. And so really what he was talking about was establishing, really bringing ourselves back to our values. He was talking about how eco means home, ultimately. And when we think of ecology, it's the science of home, or the balance of all the factors that make home. And he was talking about putting the eco back in economy, because we have taken such a profoundly reductionist approach to economics without incorporating the real value of life, and life itself, you know, water, air, earth, humanity. Yeah. So Rosalind says, what our culture teaches us is to be worthy. I disagree, Rosalind. I think our culture imbues in us unworthiness, and and tries to convince us that the only way we're going to be worthy is through acquiring things and positions and status. But anyway, I'm sorry. I will continue with what you said. What our culture teaches us is to be worthy. In nature, nothing in nature has to prove it. If I'm already approving of myself, what would I be doing different? Not to externalize your validation. Exactly. So I disagree that our culture teaches us to be worthy. However, what if, and this is something we've discussed, what if we were inherently worthy? What if we didn't have to prove anything to anyone, which is really the essence, just by virtue of being here alive on this planet, we are worthy and we don't need to prove ourselves, and externalities are not going to be are not an authentic validation. So Rosalind says something that has intrinsic value, we can ask if it can be diluted. That's an interesting thought. Can we dilute intrinsic value? I think if we're looking, I think just by nature of the definition, if value is intrinsic, then it can't be diluted. And we can destroy that that value. Like if water has intrinsic value, if we pollute it, then perhaps we're diluting or destroying that intrinsic value. We're certainly compromising it, right? Polluting it. So this was another concept that David Suzuki spoke, which was so powerful. It was so powerful. They did a study on breath to see, when we're inhaling and exhaling, how could we track a breath to see what happens to the air that we breathe? And they measured it through, what was it? I'm not remembering what the compound was that they measured it through. And I took all kinds of notes. I'm looking at the notes to see if I can find what it was. I don't know. It might have been argon. It's not in, yeah, it is argon. So argon is present in the breath, but in relatively low concentrations. So what they did was they measured how much is in a breath. Somehow they were able to track the argon. I don't know how exactly. And a year later, they found that the argon from a breath was dispersed globally. And so when we think about our connection, what he was saying is we are air. We are all connected by the air we breathe globally, and that the air we breathe has elements in it that were breathed by the dinosaurs and everyone else in history, every living creature, that we are made of elements that have been here for time immemorial. And through these elements, we are all connected. You're breathing my breath, I'm breathing yours, wherever we are in the world. And that we are connected by this matrix of breath, of air, of water. And I just thought that was such a vivid demonstration to me of our interconnectedness, our inseparability. We are individually or individuated elements of a collective consciousness, of a collection of interconnected, interwoven beings. And we breathe the same breath that the wolves and the bears and the butterflies breathe. It's just remarkable to think about life that way. And when we imagine ourselves as separate from nature, all we have to do is remember that the breath is something that knows no boundaries, that it is globally shared. And I just found that to be such a beautiful, profound awareness. And when we make visible the underlying assumptions that we just assume is the truth, are these assumptions that we assume are true. So yesterday we were talking about is there an isness? And the thing is that we assume that our economics make sense. We assume that GDP is a representation of health, of a culture. We assume that industry is more important than preservation of nature and natural resources, which is really, if we dig a bit more deeply, just the ultimate insanity. Because if we're destroying our air and our water, we're destroying the source of our existence and the foundation. So it's interesting, in my family growing up, it was all about money. Anything I did, my dad would say, well, are you making money at it? Or how much are you charging? Or are you getting paid? And it was interesting to me to be growing up in that context where money seemed to be the most important thing. And it wasn't for me. In fact, that focus on money was so intense that I rebelled against it and had a lot of issues with money as a result that I got to overcome in order to allow myself to be able to make a decent living. But the skewed cultural significance that we lend to money, and more is so toxic. Oh, Bernadette, thank you for showing up and saying hello. Bernadette says, we trust in what people tell us to be the truth if we know no difference. And so this is just really important to be looking at the invisible assumptions that we have. We have certain assumptions about health. We have certain assumptions about law. We have certain assumptions about the nature of people. And these assumptions are different for different people. We don't all have the same assumptions. But the thing is that we're operating from these assumptions as if they're true. And it's so important to provide yourself with the opportunity to question your assumptions so that you can grow, so that we as a world, we as a culture, we as a life form can grow. We need to question our assumptions, and particularly now because it's so vividly apparent how dysfunctional so many of our systems are. I mean, look at our systems have gotten us to this place in the world where we are on the precipice of destruction that is irreversible. I mean, we're teetering on the edge there. We need to wake up. We need to change things. We need to imagine new possibilities, new systems, not based on the old systems that are founded on really shaky foundations that are founded in wrong-headed assumptions that are not sustainable. And so there are all different levels that we can do this work. We do it with ourselves individually in our personal growth to recognize, what are my assumptions about these other people? You know, what am I assuming about people who have different political vantage points from me? What am I assuming about people who look different from me? What am I assuming about my responsibilities and what am I assuming about what kind of difference I can make? What am I assuming? We have all these assumptions. It's important to question. So we can question on a personal level, that's one. We can question on a local level, looking at the policies that are governing our local environments. We can start questioning what the things are that we're being told by the media and do some research. Don't just assume. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gotten emails from someone that have said, oh, you know, this, to be alert to this new scam or this new virus or this new danger, be alert. And there's a website called Snopes, SNOPES.com, that's really meant to be providing research behind whatever our latest gossip is. You know, our latest fear, our latest idea that's being virally disseminated. And I'm not saying that it's the only definitive source for information, but I would go there and people would just be forwarding this stuff without researching it, without checking to see if what they're being told has any validity. And so we're called to question, because we need to be generating new ideas, new possibilities. And so as you go into your weekend, I invite you to notice assumptions. Notice the things that you're taking for granted as true that maybe you've never questioned. And in questioning it, there's room for deeper understanding. So I invite you to check into something that you just had assumed previously, to find out what might be behind it, what might be available to you beyond the obvious. And so that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out all the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. April, how wonderful to have you joining us. Welcome. And a beautiful weekend to all of you. I so appreciate your engagement, your thoughtfulness, your willingness to entertain these ideas and thoughts and expand yourself and your consciousness. And I have so much love and appreciation for you. And I hope to see you again here really soon, hopefully Monday. And until then, so much love.